Warning, we're not your attorneys. Please, don't take anything we say as legal advice. I'm Geoff.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Derrick.
And you're listening to the Not So Grand Jury,
which is now sponsored by Moore Law P. LLC. Well, welcome back, guys. It's been a while since the Not So Grand Jury came to fruition here, but we have an extra player. I have joined as hopefully a ongoing regular member based on the sponsorship situation. It'd be weird if I wasn't. And I had such a great time when I was on the Love Guaranteed episode as a guest with you guys. I just had to come back and be a more regular member. So, excited to be here.
So we're happy to have you.
Excellent.
Yep. Glad to have you and your sponsorship.
I mean, listen, I've put up cents at this point, so it's going.
Yeah, right.
It's going strong.
I'm a cheap date, so.
And your editor.
And we will thank her at the end of this, but my wonderful sister Colleen Moore has been gracious to do the editing, so Mr. Blackwell no longer has to, which is actually one of the reasons why we've continued on. Because we've convinced Geoff that he doesn't. Since Geoff does not have to do that anymore, he was much more happy to be part of the podcast going forward, which is fair yes, on indeed. All accounts. I will actually let you guys, having been the veterans of this, tell a little bit about what it is we're about to do in this episode and in episodes going forward, if you would be so kind to give the brief overview.
Sure. So Geoff and I have been doing this on and off for a few years now, where we'll watch a TV show or a movie that we have heard about that may have some legal implication. We analyze it for what we think is either accurate or in some cases ridiculous. It takes on the legal practice. And we also just sort of talk about what we like to watch, because sometimes it's just enjoying the movie.
The goal of this podcast is for the three of us, working attorneys, to break down bits of popular media and do it in a way that's approachable to non-lawyers and to lawyers alike, and kind of give a sense of how accurate things are. We're not going to be doing a point by point plot breakdown here. We're going to kind of be treating each piece of media we're watching as a law school exam. And for the lay members of the audience, on a law school exam, you're given a story, essentially, and you have to spot all the legal issues that the story raises, and walk through, who has legal claims against who might win, what evidence is relevant, all sorts of different things. So that's how we decided we wanted to approach this. To approach these episodes and these pieces of media, be they movies or TV.
Well, I'll also add too briefly that it will be helpful if you had actually recently watched the thing we're actually going to be talking about on our show. Now, if you haven't, you might not get nearly as much out of this. I think it'll still be entertaining. But certainly it would be great if you had watched it. And you don't necessarily have to be ahead. We're not going to try to spoil stuff. And in fact, with this episode, at least one of us is not ahead of it, so we're going to definitely try not to spoil it for everyone who is listening. So,
in this case, we're doing the Netflix show The Lincoln Lawyer. Just to give some background, Derrick, I'm going to steal your background info if that's okay. So, it was a Netflix TV show. Netflix TV show has 2 seasons out right now. It's been renewed for a third. Based on some novels that I don't remember who wrote the novels. Geoff, you want to jump in?
Michael Connelly.
Oh, there we go.
Let me jump in here because I just wanted to give a brief background, because one of the reasons why I like doing this episode first is we actually have, so David Kelly, having been the creator, he's known for legal television series. He was part of LA Law, he was part of The Practice, the spinoff Boston Legal, as well as Ellie McBeal. So theoretically, we have at least a little bit of a gut check on the legal side. from the person who created it. We do have a new showrunner, so Ted Humphrey does not appear to have been a showrunner before. He did work on The Good Wife and a few other sort of known shows, but which is interesting because a new showrunner sometimes can sort of lead the show to go in very interesting directions. But one reason, again, the reason why I thought this would be a good start is, one, we're dealing with someone who is effectively a solo practitioner, even though we'll get to that in a second, as to why he's, and associates, but hey, for now he's a solo practitioner who's very similar to my practice, being a solo lawyer, so I can sort of add something to that, even though he's criminal and I'm civil, but there's certainly some overlap. As for the episode we're talking about, first season, first episode, it was released May 13th, 2022, along with all of the episodes of season 1. So the first time when they released it, they just released the whole thing in one shot and said, here you go, you can binge it in one night, which I came very close to doing. The director for the first episode is Liz Freelander, who has a very interesting resume. Directed 50 music videos for about 20 years. Some well-known ones. Mariah Carey, Kenny G, Every Time I Close My Eyes, some Three Doors Down, John Mayer, you name it. And since then, she's done a lot of TV episodes. Melrose Place, 90210, Gossip Girl, episode of The Boys. So, like, we've got some people behind the scenes that know what they're doing. Which I do think sort of shows when you watch the show. We'll talk at the end as to what we think of it, but I think it does show that someone knows what they're doing behind the scenes. As for this episode, so background of this episode, actually of the whole series, is main character of the show is Mickey Howler, played by Manuel Garcia Rolfo, Los Angeles defense attorney who is known as the Lincoln lawyer for obvious reasons. He works out of his various cars, which are, of course, Lincolns.
The Lincoln lawyer, that what they call you?
Some do, yes. Or did.
Why?
Mainly worked out of my car, going from court to court, all the driving and so forth.
Being on the ready to flee the jurisdiction if need be.
Never fled the jurisdiction.
First scene of the series, we see a man getting murdered in his car in a parking garage, being shot at very close range.
Not a Lincoln, by the way.
Not a Lincoln, yeah. Actually, a not great car. I didn't see what it was, but it didn't look anything tremendously exciting from what I recall.
I don't remember what it was, but it's not a Lincoln.
It's definitely not a Lincoln. Turns out that the guy who was killed was Jerry Vincent, former prosecutor turned defense attorney. In general, just to the episode, is that Jerry Vincent has left his entire practice to Mickey before he died. So apparently he had filed a motion with the court, which we'll get into in a second as to how that's possible, saying that he was going to transfer his entire practice to Mickey Howler if he had something happen to him. And the backstory of Mickey is that he seemed to be a very successful defense attorney, but has not had many cases in the last few years because he got addicted to painkillers after a surfing accident.
As far as I can tell, you haven't had any cases in quite some time.
I was in an accident about 18 months ago. Surfing, if you can believe it. I had multiple surgeries, and, well, there were complications.
Complications?
I took painkillers, got addicted to them. That's over now. I got help, got clean, so whatever concerns you may have about my reputation,
It's my reputation I'm concerned about. I'm the one that has to sign off on you. Or not.
The show makes clear that when this happened, he wound down his practice in some way. It doesn't go into a lot of detail about exactly how that came about. But as the show begins, he's recovered from his addiction and seems to be in the early stages of getting his practice back up and running. And that is when Mr. Vincent decides to, when he learns that Mr. Vincent left him his firm, and when he learns of the death of Mr. Vincent. So, for those who aren't aware, substance use and mental health issues are no stranger to the legal community. A survey or a study done, I believe in 2019. Let me double check that real quick. Sorry, 2016, by the American Bar Association in conjunction with the Journal of Addiction Medicine, studied 12,300 attorneys, and among them, 28.3% of the attorneys screened positive for at least mild depression. 8.4% screened positive for either severe or extremely severe depression. The numbers for anxiety and for stress are similar. And when it comes to addiction, 20.6% of those screened were screened as their use of alcohol being problematic, and 5.6% reported using opiates in the year running up to the study.
Is it weird to me that I'm going to say this in the nicest way? That almost seems low. Like, I'm not in a, I mean, it's pretty bad in the grand scheme of things. It still actually seems low compared to like sort of the legal profession I'm aware of.
I think it depends on what kind of clique you're in almost, where like at this point in my life, I barely drink at all. I barely do, like, you know, I'll go out and have a beer occasionally. And there are people that I associate with that are in a similar part of their life. And then there's also like, you know, people that are drinking every day after court. And like you know, if you go to the Ritz in Philadelphia, the Ritz across from City Hall, it's like, oh yeah, there's like half the judges in the city drinking there right now. Yeah. So it depends on like what group you're in.
It depends on your clique, depends on your firm too. I mean, having worked at a big firm previously, like I saw probably a lot more. I also see a lot more of my colleagues in that because a lot of times we are going out together after ridiculously long days, and I
just think it depends on what you notice. Where like I know I have coworkers who don't drink at all, and I have coworkers who like to have a couple drinks. So
yeah, and there is a level of consumption of alcohol that is not problematic, to be clear.
So I guess point of the report obviously is this is a very real concern amongst lawyers.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
As soon as you get to law school, one of the things they talk about in the ethics classes you have to take is substance abuse is a real issue.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the ABA provides resources for attorneys who feel they need help or someone they know is in need of help of some sort. As far as I know, most state bar associations, if not all of them, do something similar.
I think most state bars I was going to say most state bars probably, I think they have some type of line where you can call and make sure it's private and you can talk through whatever you want with someone. I think it's both. I think it's either with the ethics board or with it's just the state bar that just has a hotline. I forget exactly, but certainly I would say it's much, even from when I graduated in 2009, there's substantially more resources available than there were back then. And certainly
You've been out since 2009? I did not know that.
I graduated law school in 2009. I'm an old, just turned 40, Mike, and I'm fine with it. I'm not at all concerned that I just had to check the 40 to 49 box on the survey the last couple of days. And honestly,
getting old has been awesome. I'm 36, but 30's been great.
Well, I'm hoping 40s are better than 30s. 30s were awesome. I'm excited for 40s being even better. And I will say that every time.
I can tell you it's really not that much different. Is it being here in my ivory tower at 41?
Yeah, yes, the elder statesman of the three men here. Yes. Excellent.
This is a known issue and one that, yes, especially attorneys of our generation are very aware of. It does raise some interesting ethical questions in a lot of situations. A number of rules of ethics are implicated if you are suffering from an addiction or other mental health issue that is impairing your ability to serve your client's interests. For example, we're talking here about an attorney practicing in LA, so I'm going to focus on the California rules of ethics. Rule 1.1, and by the way, these are all based on the American Bar Association's model rules they've put out to essentially provide guidance to the states on what their individual rules should be. But Rule 1.1 in California deals with an attorney's competence to practice law, particularly to practice law in a given area. You have to have sufficient knowledge to actually be able to counsel your clients. But you also have to maintain your competence and if you suffer from a mental impairment, then you as an attorney have an obligation to refer your clients out to other counsel who are competent. The same goes for under Rule 1.3, you have to exercise diligence when representing your clients. And if, say, you're missing court deadlines, if you're taking forever to get back to clients. I mean, there are plenty of attorneys who take forever to get back to clients just without any impairment. But if it's impinging your ability to, do your job in a timely fashion, then the same sort of obligations come into play. Rule 1.4 deals specifically with communicating with your clients. All of these are situations where you have to recognize that you're having this issue and then take affirmative steps to correct it. And there are situations where, if you are having, if you're potentially suffering from a severe anxiety over an extended period, and you may have an affirmative duty to end your representation of a client, particularly if the anxiety or depression or addiction or what have you, quote, renders it unreasonably difficult to carry out the representation effectively. In that situation, you must end your representation of a client or any of your clients if it precludes you from doing all of them.
So as someone who is a solo lawyer, it is nice to know that for me to figure out whether I have a duty to terminate requires a lawyer to understand when that level is. I mean, renders it unreasonably difficult to carry out the representation effectively. That is not a standard level. Like that's actually slightly worrisome to be able to know when that happens.
Yeah, and I'll actually skip ahead in my notes a bit because when it comes to attorneys working at attorneys who are at firms or employers where they are not the sole attorney, there is a formal opinion from the ABA Standing Committee on Ethics and Professional Responsibility. Lawyers are
that sounds
really
like a hoot and a half. I want to be on that.
Yeah, which says that under a few of the other rules, for example, here Rule 5.1. Requires that all partners in a firm and lawyers with comparable managerial authority in professional corporations, legal departments, blah, 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 make reasonable efforts to establish internal policies and procedures designed to provide reasonable assurance that all the attorneys in the firm, not just lawyers known to be impaired, fulfill the requirements laid out by the rules of ethics. And if the firm has taken those steps, the firm can't be held responsible if an attorney fails to meet that standard. Unfortunately, at a solo firm, the responsibility does fall on the attorney to be self-aware enough to recognize that they are not able to do their job, which can be difficult if you're suffering from any number of mental health issues. I imagine you could try and set up some sort of procedure with your staff or perhaps an outside attorney friend of yours who you trust, who would counsel you as to whether or not you are in danger of needing to invoke any of these rules. But you'd also have to be in a position to, you'd have to then not your own mental health issue that you might be suffering from may impede your ability to take what they're saying as true. The same goes for if it's like your staff. They are also your underlings, so they may be reticent to say, I don't think you're able to practice law. Their livelihood depends on you being able to practice law, by the way. So there are a lot of issues for solo attorneys when it comes to ensuring that any mental health concerns they have are not impairing their ability to do their job. And it's best to act early when you feel you're depressed, anxious, overstressed, maybe suffering from an addiction.
I imagine in solo cases, the first people to notice would either be the judges you're appearing in front of, or opposing counsel, or clients.
Oh yeah, a lot of this comes up after a court has disciplined you for something that happened in a particular case. But better to take voluntary steps than to be disciplined.
Obviously, but also the people who I don't want to characterize this too much, but I can imagine a certain class of people that, like, you've been practicing for a million years, you don't think you're getting older, you're slipping a little because you're 70 years old.
Yeah.
And like the person that's going to tell you gently is going to be the judge, not your staff that can fire you.
That's true.
So it's not your staff that you can fire.
Yeah. Or other attorney friends and partners, things like that.
And I think that's actually one of the reasons why some of the firms have mandatory retirement ages or like senior partner status, just because that actually makes those conversations easier by just saying, well, at a certain age you're gone. Now, that's not the only reason why you would become incompetent, but that's certainly one of them that is concerning, is just the slowly getting older and older until at a point where it's like, well, no, you can't do what you used to do, and you don't think what you're doing is as bad as it actually is.
Yeah. And the one last thing I want to mention, the statistics I found didn't go into instances of self-harm or suicidal ideations or thoughts and things like that. But I did want to mention that is also an issue. And if an attorney, as will be relevant to our conversation in a little bit, if an attorney dies, or if an attorney is unavailable, perhaps because they are hospitalized for attempting to end their own life, and they have not first made arrangements to refer out, the duty of doing that under ABA Model Rule for Disciplinary Enforcement 28 falls to the presiding judge of the jurisdiction or jurisdictions in which you have your cases. And we see a little bit of that. We see a version of that in this episode. So this is a complicated and fraught issue, quite frankly. And it's interesting to see the show discuss this issue, although they don't go into a lot of detail, and the procedures, particularly the ones that we're about to talk about with regard to one attorney giving his practice to another attorney, kind of glosses over some of the more nitty-gritty stuff.
Without spoiling too much, how much backstory is given about why Mickey Holler stepped away, or how that happened? Like, do we ever see him?
We don't get a lot of
recognizing he can't practice.
We don't get a lot. I will say though, there is one or two direct situations in future episodes where they do mention that he sort of dropped the ball on a case or two, or on a potential client, and sort of left them in the lurch. And not to spoil it, but It does have an impact. We don't get much into it, but it certainly is an interesting concept of, okay, so he gets, let's just think of the sort of theoretical. He gets into an accident. He's unable to practice law for at least a little bit. So we have the first part of he's just unavailable, right? So what are the legal implications when he's unavailable and hospitalized? And then comes then he gets addicted to painkillers. Now we have a sort of different set of circumstances. True. And all we kind of know is that his second ex-wife, also known as his, sort of, I'm not sure if at the time she was active in his practice or if she became active in his practice when he was going through this, but either way, she's the one that sort of, as she said, keeping the practice together. But she's not a lawyer, so I don't know how she's actually keeping the practice together, other than maybe paying some expenses and bills and hoping that they, that the practice actually is an existing company. But that's really all that she can do.
I don't know what the business model is here, other than like he has one-time clients who pay him to represent them in one case. But if there is some kind of repeated client, if you have a good office manager or a good paralegal, like my clients are aware of my paralegals, and there's I have a client that is with me because they really like one particular paralegal, and that's fine. She gets a raise because of that. So
Okay.
it could be a situation like that, but I don't know how that would fit in with this sort of business structure where like I've seen the movie and I've seen this episode. Between the two of them, it seems like every single one of his cases is going to be a one-time whodunit, and that's
well. And he does have ongoing clients. We do find out about certain ongoing clients, but they do seem to be hourly. It's not like there's some type of subscription rate, or maybe there's a retainer situation, but the retainer is based on his hourly, and they take it off of that.
Yeah. So for my business model, for my client, my firm's business model, it's like we have 10 or 20 very large clients, and then we have a bunch of smaller clients. And like if you're the person that brought in one of those 10 or 20 big clients, it's like you did real good. We're real happy with you. You get a big bonus this year.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't think it's spoiling anything to say that he has one client who's a sex worker who he repeatedly represents in court. So yeah, unclear what the overall business model is, but he has a range of clients.
Yeah, he definitely has a range of clients, but it does seem like, and then we only find this out because in future episodes when they start getting into more billing, that they talk about what he requires up front, but they mention hourly rate multiple times. There's really no mention of, flat fee situations or other things, but they don't really get into it too much, so it's hard to know.
On the note of his business model, actually, this is not important at all. He represents a client, wins a case, and gives her a job for payment.
I don't know how to thank you, Mr. Haller. I will pay you one day, I promise.
You pay me now.
I'm broke. I don't have a nickel to my name.
You have a driver's license?
Excuse me?
What do you mean you hired her?
Well, I told you I needed a driver, and she can drive.
I'm actually a good driver.
She's actually a good driver, Lorna.
That's not a good business model.
I mean, I would say it worked out pretty well, though.
As long as, he can't employ her indefinitely just based on the fact that he won her a legal case. Like, that's it.
I know,
That's
it's just like, man, that is it's not a sustainable business model.
No, but when you're someone who works from your car, having a driver is a good idea.
Sure.
Questionable whether or not you should hire, one of your clients to do that job.
Well, in fairness, it was over. He had won the case. She's no longer his client.
That's true.
For all practical purposes.
No, that much is true. But I could see problems cropping up in the future.
Oh, of course. But it is there's an interesting, if you just look at the sort of baseline, that it's a former addict hiring another former addict to drive him around.
Yeah, and at one point she kind of is acting as a sponsor in a way.
Kind of. Yeah. Yep. We'll get there. We'll get there. But yeah, what Geoff mentioned, listen, the concept of when a lawyer needs to step down, when they need to get help, is obviously a very important conversation. And I don't think it's talked about enough. I'm trying to think of, when I've gone a couple times, the DC bar has a sort of one day, full 8 hours of, different activities and speakers and so on and so forth. And, they do get into ethics here or there, but, I think this is a conversation that needs to happen more often. And there is something nice about that they do get into it at least a little bit here, but obviously, as we'll find out as the show goes on, like, it's almost let's start him from the bottom and watch him rise up rather than, that's sort of like a main part. That's not the main arc. The arc starts with that, and then we get into the show. So they don't really get too much into it. But, but it's certainly not. It's certainly
the show. It is perhaps a D plot.
It's a D plot, but it's sort of on the background at all times. It's that he's coming up from this, so it allows him when he's doing well to look even awesome because he's coming from nothing over the last couple of years. Imagine having not lawyered for 730 days and coming back and just jumping into a courtroom again. It is kind of impressive in of itself. So, with that in mind. Well, and with that in mind, let's talk about the fact that you haven't lawyered for 730 days and then get handed a law practice. Let's talk about that situation. So,
that you've essentially been not a lawyer for.
Right, like you have not lawyered, and then you get handed a effectively full practice one day. And congratulations, you now have to be a 100% full-time lawyer within a snap of your fingers, which is that's a thing. So in this,
I'm gonna head off some tweets. It was 18 months, so not 730 days, but like.
Listen, I hope we get all the tweets because that means people are listening and they care. If we get any tweet, that can be the thing they focus on.
What are these tweets you guys speak of?
X's.
Oh, I'm sorry.
X's.
X's.
I'm on Mastodon, so I toot.
These toots, yes.
Excellent.
All the toots.
Yeah. I hope we get I hope from every social media platform people complain about my mathing because that'd be awesome. Because that means people care, and that's the thing they care about, which would be great. But yeah, so let's get into sort of how this, I think it's kind of, not gonna say the most important, but certainly the most interesting conversation I think regarding this episode is like, how do you get transferred to law practice? I mean, and the way it works here is effectively, I think it was like 10 days before Jerry Vincent's killed, he filed a motion with the court that quote unquote allowed for the transfer of his entire practice to Mickey Holler should he become incapacitated or deceased.
I used to go up against him back when he was a prosecutor, and he switched sides.
He was murdered last night.
Excuse me?
Shot dead in his car.
What?
If you were close, please accept my condolences, but that's not why you're here. Were you close?
I mean, friendly colleagues mostly.
He left you his practice.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Vincent filed a motion with the court 10 days ago that allowed for the transfer of his entire practice to you should he become incapacitated or deceased. He never discussed this with you.
No.
Well, last night he became deceased, which means what was his is now yours.
Okay. One, I don't think such a motion exists. I don't think there's a way to just file a generic motion with a court that says, if I die, send everything to this guy. I'm confident that's what an operating agreement or a will is for, or both, in order to transfer an actual practice or assets or your business. So I guess that's step one. Step two is, and you guys can chime in on this because I'm not aware of this. How would even such a motion be filed? Do you just send? Well, I'm curious.
I just imagine you submitting this generic motion to the court, not related to any active case, so it's just a generic motion, and the poor clerk who reads this being like, "What the fuck is this shit? What is it? What am I looking at here?"
Like, I don't even know where you'd file it. I don't know where you'd file it. Like, you'd have to literally just send it to mail to the superior court and hope someone opens it.
In re me, like just there's no case here. I don't know what this would be associated with. It's not. You're not an estate.
It's,
Yeah, and a law firm is a company. A law firm is generally either a limited liability company, generally not a corporation, but and you can't. I mean, even if there was a motion that he could file, like the presiding judge doesn't have the authority to just like change all the governing documents over so that they have the right names and change all the bank account information. Unless there's some weird mechanism in California that none of us are familiar with, just no way it could work like this.
Well, and I will say, as someone who has his own firm, I have done, let's just say, substantial research on what would happen if I wasn't able to practice, or if I had to transfer it or whatever. This never came up. Let's be honest. There was no situation where it's like, pre-file a motion just in case. That was never part of any of the advice I have received, whether either from people who have solo practices or just generally through my searches over the years. So I don't think that's a thing.
And the motion he filed, So I just rewatched the beginning of this episode so that I could refresh my memory a little bit. And the judge said that he filed the motion 10 days prior. And I think the motion was effectively that should he die, his firm should go to Mickey Haller.
Right. Allowed for the transfer of his practice if he became incapacitated or deceased.
Okay. So I just don't like, so is that motion then just sitting on the court's docket for until he happens to die, or
Right. The generic court docket, Geoff. Not an actual case docket. The generic court docket that isn't the thing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. We're not even talking about the like Supreme Court's shadow docket. This is just the, I don't know, platonic ideal of the docket.
The presiding judge's own personal docket that somehow it got to her.
Right. And what's funny is I just mentioned that the rules allow for a situation where an attorney dies and the presiding judge farms out their clients. Now, he could have written a letter to the presiding judge saying, hey, if I die, Mickey Haller's who I would like you to send my clients to. And then we wouldn't be having this conversation about what the hell is this? But I think they just had to make it legal.
Right.
Or legalese or what have you.
Well, there was two things they had to do. There were two things they had to do. They had to make it happen quick, which only can happen if it's like full transfer of practice within a matter of an order that is, again, I'm not sure how the order is made. There's no docket, so it's just a random order. They also need a situation where, because like in the scenario you said, Geoff, what the presiding, like one, the presiding judge can't do anything with the practice. She would just assign
the clients,
lawyers she knows to take on various cases. So like she didn't even know Mickey Haller. He wouldn't have gotten a single case. She would have farmed it out to the people that she knew or that she got recommendations for or whatever. If he had, sent a letter or something, fine. Maybe she takes some of that under advisement, but she probably isn't required to. So like in that scenario, I actually do applaud the show for finding a kind of creative way to do this. It's totally implausible, but it's not plausible at all, but it is an interesting way to sort of get there quickly.
I'm confident at some point there's an attorney that they speak to, even if it's only briefly, because there's things that you wouldn't know to do unless an attorney told you. You wouldn't get just from watching a couple days in court. There must have been another way for a more creative legal writing way for them to transfer practice. I wonder if the books have a different way, or if this actually makes me want to read the book. If this happened in the book, is this a plot that happens? And maybe
I don't actually know. And I'll point out David E. Kelly used to be an attorney, so
that might be the answer. Then maybe it's somebody who practiced a million years ago, doesn't really care that much about it, but that's who's giving them the basic feeding points about certain things.
Right.
And it had to have been a conversation. Yeah. It had to have been a conversation about how do we get there? Because they come up with the idea. Okay, guy's gonna die. He's gonna take this high profile client. But how do we get that case to him?
And they're not writing it for us.
Of course not.
That's a weird fucking point. Let's talk about that for 45 minutes.
I was just gonna say, meticulously following the proper legal procedures is not entertaining.
It is
the opposite of dramatic.
You are wrong. My cousin Vinny. Lots of good movies have done this. You can make a whole point about
I said following proper legal procedures, not showing up and saying you're an attorney who died 5 days or 5 months ago or whatever.
But then you get the girl from good movie. We'll
absolutely.
Do that at some point.
We'll address it one day.
It's gotta be on the list, guys.
But you can make a good show that is legally accurate. This was definitely. You remember the line in "Thank You for Smoking" when they're talking about script writing and they're talking about pitching a movie script where people are smoking in outer space and wouldn't they cause the pure oxygen to explode? We'll just have a line about thank goodness for the whatever device that lets us smoke in outer space.
Sure. Yeah, I've never seen that movie, but yeah.
Really? Oh, excellent movie.
I can't say I have either. I can't say I
One of
either.
the many
So
of us.
if you're listening and you know that movie, Mike was talking to you because it wasn't us.
Hi everyone, Derrick here with a brief message. The Not So Grand Jury is sponsored by my law firm, Moore P. LLC. One of Moore PLC's many practice areas is business law. If you are a business owner or someone who is thinking of starting up a new or side business, you need a legal team who can efficiently provide you legal counsel, keeping you and your business away from potential legal issues, and if necessary, representing you in any disputes that do arise. We pride ourselves on being cost efficient while also getting to know our clients. If you want less stress and more support, you need More Law. If you would like to set up a free consult, please click on the link in the show notes, visit our website, www.mooreatty.com, that's mooreatty.com, or email us at contact@mooreatty.com. And now, back to the show.
So we have a situation here where he's been handed a practice. And by the way, for the record, he isn't just handed clients, he isn't just handed case files. He's literally handed his entire practice. Somehow, through this vague order that the presiding judge signs, or I guess it's the chief judge, is that what they call her? The chief judge of LA Superior Court?
I think they call it presiding.
Okay. That through this order, he is effectively handed the company. So like it's called Vincent and Associates. Presumably it's an LLC, operating as Vincent and Associates. He's apparently handed the LLC because he gets everything in the actual office. He gets all the client files. He gets everything. Well, let's first jump right into, since I just mentioned the name of the firm, Vincent and Associates. That's an interesting name because it's just Vincent. There's no associates. So, can he be Vincent and Associates? And from my perspective, as someone who did my research on this, because I at one point had contemplated the name Moore and Associates, there are multiple ethics opinions out there that say you can't be and Associates without associates. So, he is certainly skirting, if not blatantly violating certain ethics rules. I'm curious on your guys' opinions on that, because and the rationale behind it is pretty straightforward. You cannot put yourself out into public having associates if you don't have associates. Like, it is possibly you are, misadvertising yourself as having more than you actually do. Which, I guess.
So, for the most part, who would care? Who would be upset that you as Moore and Associates are just Moore?
The only thing I could see is like a random client who is expecting someone else, but they would just be upset generally.
The thing is, like, it would be the client that's upset enough at you that they would file something against you in an ethics court is the client that will find this. Like, the person that's litigious enough to have not only gone to you, an attorney, for whatever reason, but also litigious enough to want to report you to the ethics bar is the person that's also going to be, and he did this. Like, not only was he an asshole and he drunk and whatever, he also said there were more of him. There was more.
Right. Which, by the way, would be a client I wouldn't want from the beginning, but here we are. So,
well, also, you don't always know your clients at a time. Sometimes you just,
fact.
Like, I got a new client.
Fact. Yeah. To my clients listening, you're not applicable to this. I love you all.
Not you, the other one.
Not you. It's the other.
We're talking about the other guy.
It's the clients that don't listen to my podcast that I'm completely referencing here.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting. And by the way, I'm confident. I don't think it's this episode, but I'm confident the firm becomes Howler and Associates. And again, there's no associate, so it's interesting.
So what would happen if there were associates and then they left, or there were, like, I guess you have to change the name, and like maybe there's some grace period where it's like, oh, I had the old IP address, I haven't changed that over, but everything else had changed or something. Like, you made the effort, it just hadn't quite gotten through to everything. I had some old business cards lying around or something.
Yeah, that would be my guess. I mean, it's hard to know. I did enough research to know I wasn't even going to go down that path, and I moved on.
Yeah. Sorry, there's a million rabbit holes we can explore.
Oh yes, quite. Well, in fact, I was at the time when I started my firm, my cat's name was Noodles. I had received many requests that I should do Noodles and More, or More and Noodles, or More Noodles, or something like that. I received from from many different lawyers, some of which who had been part of, ethics committees, said, honestly, you could get away with that and no one would care. So clearly there's what the technical rules say and what could actually happen. And those are, I think, two separate things. Because again, as long as I had no client complaining to the ethics bar, I think I could probably get away with almost any name.
Yeah, but like that's true of every ethics violation. It's like,
that is true.
Until somebody reports you, it's fine. Until the cops arrest you, breaking the law is cool. That's not actual legal advice.
Well, I'm confident none of my accomplices will report me.
Right. The one exception being any type of a trust account violation. That's a big fat no no matter what. So
you should. Yeah. Now this is maybe the most harmless ethics violation you could have, where you're naming something after your cat and like it doesn't really affect anyone.
Correct.
But also like none of us are going to do this. Obviously, like it reflects very well on you that you researched this to begin with. Right. But like,
right.
I don't know. You're not going to do that because it's a silly.
It wasn't worth it.
Just like,
let's put it that way. It wasn't worth even trying to do it, even if I'm like, oh, it's kind of okay. No, it just wasn't worth it. Like, I'm starting my brand new firm. I didn't want the first thing that happens to my brand new firm to be like, is my name even correct? So, yeah. But anyway, so hypothetically, let's jump into sort of the next situation. Okay, so we've had this transfer of practice. Well, in real life, there would have likely been, the situation would have been, he would have died. Whoever is the person that's in charge of his will would have sort of stepped in, and they would have had to go through probate, and they would have to do all those things. So like in the interim, there may be a way for like lawyers to take over cases, but there is no scenario where like within 12 hours of him dying, another lawyer takes over his entire firm. So we can just say that that's not something that would happen. But let's say, okay, so it does happen. So we have this transfer of practice. I have a couple questions, which is, one, so what does he actually get? So obviously he gets the assets for the firm, he gets whatever's in the bank accounts, he gets the client files, but we all know that every client has a right to their own lawyer. So the way the judge that, sort of did the order said to him is, you get first crack at every client, is what she said.
They're all your cases, Mr. Haller. You might not get to keep them. Every client has the right to move on to another attorney once apprised of Mr. Vincent's demise. What it does mean is you get first shot, assuming I'm satisfied that Mr. Vincent's clients are being transferred to a replacement counsel of good standing and competent skill.
How does that work? I mean, so you're going up and basically saying, I'm your lawyer until you say no? It's a weird. What are the ethical obligations there?
If something like this could exist,
right?
The most it would be is like you are being substituted in any active case immediately, and then they have the opportunity to find like there's a hearing happening tomorrow. You have to be there to ask for the continuance,
right?
But like I don't think there's anything else that would guarantee your employment with them or them retaining you, other than like you're the one meeting them in court and like, where's the other guy? Oh, he died. He got shot. It's real sad.
Yeah, and the only thing I really came up with that directly speaks to this is there's an ABA model rule, which for those paying attention closely, Geoff mentioned the ABA model rules earlier, which are effectively rules that, again, are models is the best way to describe it, to the different states and jurisdictions to come up with their own rules. So the ABA model rules by themselves don't necessarily have any direct applicability, and there's we can't cite the ABA model rule for ethics violations, but many of them are very similar to the state guidelines. So the one I found is that it's with regards to sole practitioners. It's to prevent neglect of client matters in the event of a sole practitioner's death or disability. The duty of diligence may require, great, doesn't even say require, may require, that each sole practitioner prepare a plan in conformity with applicable rules that designates another competent lawyer to review client files, notify each client of the lawyer's death or disability, and determine whether there is a need for immediate protective action. So the way that's read, it's like if there's a lawyer that jumps in, their job is to basically right the ship. It's make sure that there isn't a TRO that needs to be immediately filed, make sure you don't have a trial coming up tomorrow, make sure you do all that stuff. Once you've done that, you basically tell the client, all right, your lawyer's died. I'm here. I could be your lawyer, but like, what is the actual ethical obligations? Do you have to say to them, I'm your lawyer now? Or do you say, I'm literally here just to tell you that your lawyer died. I am a lawyer, but it's up to you to decide who your next lawyer is. Thoughts?
So my first instinct is, if there is, and let me say, I haven't looked at the rules as to this particular question, so everything I'm about to say, take with a grain of salt. Don't take legal advice from the podcast. But first, if you inherit a firm, and if anything's got a pressing deadline, either do what needs to be done or ask for a continuance. Write to all your clients via certified mail so that you can be sure it got delivered and delivered to the right place. Saying, so-and-so attorney passed away. He entrusted his law firm to me. I am happy to take on your case. However, as the client, you have you are entirely free to look for alternative counsel if you so choose. I would even go so far as say, I encourage you to shop around and see if there may be someone who's a better fit for you than I am. But I am here if you wish to continue, and I'm prepared to continue on with your case. This is what's upcoming, what I'm planning to do to make sure everything stays on track. Thank you, and I look forward to working with you. And some version of that.
Yeah, and that's probably the correct that's probably what I would call the down the middle correct version. I'm sure the actual how it would work in real life is, I'm your lawyer, I'm Derrick, nice to meet you, and just proceed as if you're their lawyer until proven otherwise. That's how I would guess it would happen. Well, and what's interesting about this episode is that's kind of how it works for everyone, except the big case. So the big case, we make a huge deal about the fact that he has to pitch himself. He has to prove that he's the right lawyer. With every other client, it's like, hey, I'm your lawyer now. And that's that's the conversation that happens.
Hey, I'm your lawyer. We're supposed to start a trial now.
Right.
I'm going to ask for some time and agree to have a day to prepare for trial.
By the way,
judge, can we talk about that for just a second?
That judge is awesome. That judge is awesome. 24 hours.
The fact that this judge, I mean,
that his docket's clean enough that he can just continue for 24 hours and have a trial the next day.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And that both the judge and the prosecutor are like, well, it's only 2 witnesses.
Obviously, I'm gonna need a continuance.
Obviously, I'm not gonna give it to you.
What?
I got out-of-town witnesses. I'd rather they be pissed off at the judge or you than me, especially if I want to get them back.
LA 292-587, People versus Izzy Letts.
And we're on. Sarah Shepard for the people, Judge. Ready for trial.
Nikki Haller for the defendant, Your Honor. I'll be with you in 1 second. May I approach? Your Honor, Mr. Vincent unexpectedly passed yesterday. I'm filling in.
My sincere condolences. When will you be ready?
Well?
Don't be greedy. It's a bench trial with 2 witnesses.
Out-of-town witnesses, who I'm at risk of losing with the continuance.
How's tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Look at the file. If you feel like you can't be ready, let me know. Step back.
Preparing, even if it's just 2 witnesses, an attorney who's taken that case has probably, put I'm going to say at least a month into it if they're really, doing their jobs. And for him to think that for the judge or the prosecutor to say, you can get up to speed right now, right? You can ask a witness you've never seen before, never read any prior statements, don't know what relevant information they have. You can assess all that in 24 hours and get back to us.
To be fair, the information he needed to win the case, he observed immediately.
That's true, yes.
He'd been there for like 12 seconds. He's like, I got this. I'm in. It also ignores the possibility of, like, they could have appeared telephonically Like, we live in 2023, almost 2024. Like, there's other ways for them. If it's impossible for them to be there any other point except for today, the judge could have made some accommodation that, oh, you're going to appear via Zoom. We'll swear you in. We'll do the testimony like that. I'm sorry, but that's the only way it'll work.
Oh, you're referring to the witnesses who were
that
brought in for
there.
the trial that day. Yeah.
If there truly was no other way for them to appear other than that day, like, they could have made this work some other way.
And that's the other thing. The prosecutor being like, I brought these two witnesses in from out of town for this one day. Why Mickey isn't like, her attorney was murdered last night. So are we really going to play the...
it's like a really good... Like, the person that... The attorney of record has a breeze going through their brain right now.
It's kind of nuts. I mean, I get what she says. She goes, listen, I'd rather have them be mad at you or the judge. But it's also like, are you kidding? The lawyer that you've probably worked with on a regular basis on the defense side was blown to smithereens the night before, and you're like, screw you. Like, not going to give you even a minute. Like, because wouldn't she just go to the people who are going to be testifying and be like, dude, the other side's lawyer, like, he got murdered last night. This shit ain't happening.
Oh yeah, and it's not even clients. It's like they don't have. This is the prosecutor. They don't have to worry about losing clients. Like, occasionally, like, I have to object to something that, like, I know is really dumb. I know the judge is gonna think it's really dumb. The other side knows it's really dumb, but my client will be upset if I don't do it. So, like, you just do it.
I like how the judge was completely on her side too. He's like, my condolences. Can you be ready tomorrow? Like, oh, that's so sweet of you. Thank you, Your Honor. And, like, but I guess here's the funny thing. He was then nice and said, check the file. If you can't be ready, let me know. Like, if I was that lawyer, hypothetically, I would have about 2 hours later called up his clerk and been like, guys, I need a week or something here. Like, you got to help me out.
Because, by the way, I'm preparing for another major murder trial that's starting next week.
By the way, I got handed an entire practice in the last few minutes. So can we talk about that?
Yeah. Is there, like, a number on how many cases it is or anything like that? Or
I don't think so. No.
Just like it's as many as the plot requires, probably.
Yeah, as many as the writers need.
Right.
Yeah. Like 8 seasons down the road, it's like, oh, and here's that other client we got.
Yeah, I would be curious if anyone has done that math to see, like, over the course of the next season or two, like, how many clients and cases come up. Because they do, in future episodes, they show, like, a ledger of, like, retainers and things like that. So we could probably guess.
Just imagine the situation where you are getting a full practice, like, apparently a practice that is at least large enough to sustain, this person and maybe whatever staff he has. I don't know if we ever meet the staff. Just think about going through the emails and trying to reassemble what the fuck happened. And, like, you don't have, like, you're not the first person there. You don't remember, like, the phone conversations. So it's like, you hope he took good notes. You hope that there's emails he can reconstruct it with. But, like, the nightmare, like, we all do this as a living anyway, where you're like, what emails do you have about these things? What, did they send notices? Where you're going through and trying to reassemble what happened through, like, the little pinhole view that we have of the world when we're practicing. And, like, just the nightmare of trying to figure out what the fuck is going on in this case. Who are my witnesses? Like, who's going to appear?
Well, I actually had, I'm going to say, minor heart palpitations when I actually thought about something very similar, because I had that moment of, if someone had to jump into my email right now and be like, what's Derrick doing with his life? And what are his clients? I do have one pretty good Word document that kind of summarizes what's going on. It's not that great. It's not necessarily updated, but it at least gives an overview of what's going on. But, like, here's the thing. Like, so I've had a practice now for about 4.5 years, and it sounds like Jerry Vincent had one for forever. Like, so he's had one for a while. So presumably he has a fair amount of clients, some ongoing, some new, or whatever. If someone tried to make a understanding of what's going on in all of my cases, I probably have anywhere from 15 to 25 ongoing clients who I'm doing work for, like, now, like either this week or next week or sometime soon, and then have a bunch of tacit clients that have things coming up in the future. You could probably go check to see, like, the docket and see what I have coming up, but, like, I know he's criminal defense, so a lot of his stuff is docket based, but you can't tell me everything is going to be on a court calendar. Like, there's going to be stuff that he has to file, and it's just you do see it that Lorna has a hell of a time trying to piece everything together. Yeah, I think every practice had a very hard time piecing anything together.
So maybe this is filled in with plot later on, but like, I was just going on about the emails. Does he have the login for the emails? Like, how does he check the fucking, like, how does he know where any of the stuff is? How does he know where the files are?
They never address that, and I'm not spoiling anything to say that Mr. Vincent, no staff of his ever appears in the show.
Okay.
No other attorneys ever appear in the show. I don't know how this one guy practicing by himself was handling. I mean, he didn't even have Mickey's support staff or well, he did have an investigator. Okay, I'll take it back. He had an investigator.
He had an investigator, and he had the secretary, right?
Did he?
Yeah, the secretary comes in. Remember?
Oh, that's right. The secretary shows up, and it turns out they've been having.
But she's useless
for a while.
She's absolutely useless, and she knows no.
Spoiler alert! It's not relevant, but.
Right. Right. It's a spoiler alert, but it's not really. She doesn't help at all. Is the short version, and they were probably sleeping together. But we don't have to get into that.
Good for him. Yeah, I just like going nuts about the idea of like, and this is probably a thing that happens in real life if you do inherit a practice. But like, do you transfer over all your passwords? Do you have a password manager that you give to that person? I don't know. Like, I'm happy I don't. Yeah, I like. At work, my office has my important passwords, but that's just like a thing that we've managed to do. I don't know. I'm glad that I don't have to manage my own practice. I'm glad I don't have to worry about these things. But like, man, I find that terrifying.
It is, and I'll say from someone who has to do that, it's a little terrifying. I will tell you that I have a plan together for if I was ever incapacitated, but I'm going to be honest. It probably needs to be more robust the more I think about it. Because it's
I had never thought about the password issue until right now, but it's like, oh yeah, if you are practicing, if you're a solo practitioner, why would you everyone should have good password hygiene and not reuse the same password, and you should have that secure somehow. But then how do you give all of that stuff to somebody else where it's like, oh, I need your log on. I guess the court docket probably has some mechanism to transfer those to another attorney themselves, but your emails, the password for the bank accounts, for the trust accounts.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
that the first day of the job would just be trying to figure that stuff out.
I think it would be the first 2 weeks of the job.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
I mean, this is not the only context in which that comes up. If anybody dies, they have all their social media accounts, they have all their bank accounts, all that stuff that either a parent needs to take over, a child needs to take over, a surviving spouse needs to take over, and that the banks and Google and all that have procedures for, okay, somebody died, send us the letters of, the testamentary, I'm blanking on the word now, but, send us the order saying that you're supposed to have these, and we'll let you set up a new password.
Was it the power of appointment? Is that what you're thinking of, Geoff?
Like appointment as an executor, or just that if you've been, I don't know.
Send us that order that they filed ahead of time.
Right. Yeah.
Send the pre-filed motion.
Oh wait, you mean you didn't file the generic motion on the docket? Well,
the pre-decedent
you're supposed
motion.
to do that, And you're supposed to also file it with every bank and social media company serving the district.
It's like not only is the clerk being like, "What the fuck is this?" It's like the random person working for Gmail's like, "What the fuck is this?" Like,
by the way, I would love to know what the order says so that he can give it to the cops and they immediately know it's his practice now.
So many questions
Does the order just simply say, "Jerry Vincent shit is now this guy's shit. Show my ID." And he just leaves.
You're contaminating a crime scene. You can't be here.
This order will confirm I've been appointed by the presiding judge of the Superior Court as replacement counsel to Jerry Vincent's clients. That means his cases are not my cases, and you have no right to be in here looking through files. That's attorney-client privilege.
So the main character as soon as he gets the practice, he goes to the offices. They're being investigated by the police, which is what the police should do. They should be there. That makes sense. There is this sensitive area about attorney-client privilege and the police investigating an actual law office, because there's a lot of privileged material there, especially it's like a criminal practice. But they should have sorry, go on.
We've seen recently how that kind of thing should play out, where if the cops are, if you're the cops and you're seeking a search warrant for a law office, the judges know what you have to do. You have to, have a special master to go over all the client files and make sure the attorney-client privilege is maintained.
Phrase, a taint team.
Oh yes, a taint team. Yeah.
You have a clean team and the taint team. So you have a way of separating out the privileged material. So attorney-client privilege applies to any communication between an attorney and the client. It's very robust it's very robust as long as you are actively practicing law and not trying to break a crime, or there's a handful of other exceptions. But it doesn't mean it's completely bulletproof. And if there's a murder being investigated, you would have a special master reviewing the evidence, or a taint team reviewing the evidence. It wouldn't be. You have to make sure that it's never there's never cross contamination there. And if there ever is, that's that would be a really good way to have a case dismissed, or just completely ruin another case. So going back, I guess there's a lot of questions about that. About why the cops completely stopped the investigation, how they know this one random order that we don't know what the fuck it says somehow convinces them to leave. While watching the episode, I was going nuts about the fact that he was joking about how he murdered the attorney, because that's even a fucking joke. You don't tell that joke to a cop.
Oh no.
So
no.
There's no humor. There's no tone that comes through when they just write in the fucking warrant for your arrest, he said he did it.
To be clear, if anybody hasn't seen it, the cops are like, "Oh, you inherited his entire firm and all his clients? Yeah. Well, all right, you're now on our suspect list."
Yeah, which fucking obviously.
And he's like, "Oh, you got me. I killed the guy." And I'm like, "What are you doing?"
You say this gives you all of Mr. Vincent's cases.
That's right.
I guess that puts you on our list.
Come again?
Our suspect list. He's dead, and you get the whole business. That's motive, ask me. Care to tell us where you were last night between 8 and midnight?
You got me, detective. You got me. I killed Jared. Case closed. Case closed, everybody!
Wait, how is his response not immediately, I didn't even know I had this practice until literally 30 minutes ago?
I think he did actually say that afterwards, but the first thing he says is I killed him.
Me. I killed him. Got me. I killed him. Case closed, everyone.
That was actually the last scene of the series. It's amazing that they had a whole season, but it was actually just 12 minutes.
Right.
It's just 12 minutes in, over. Oh, credits.
That was it. Case is over.
The Lincoln lawyer.
Oh, that would be such a great troll.
For those listening who aren't lawyers and heard the term special master, I'm just going to briefly say that a special master is typically someone that a judge appoints to get some either technical advice, or in this case we use the example of having someone come in and review privileged information to see whether it can be used by law enforcement. But a good example of a special master was U.S. versus Microsoft, when the judge appointed Professor Lawrence Lessig of Harvard Law School as a special master to advise the court on certain technical issues and things like that.
That's not the example I thought you were going to go with at all. I thought you were going to go with the Trump one.
I assumed it was going to be a Trump.
I've ignored most of the Trump stuff so much that I actually prefer to talk about other things.
The time that it's been in the news the most, I guess, recently was it Eileen Cannon appointed one in not the current Trump case she's handling, but the one that preceded it. And
I think it was in Michael Cohen's case.
No. It's been in a couple of them, because that was the Michael Cohen one. Also had a taint team at one point.
Okay.
So a taint team is literally just a separate team of attorneys that will also be reviewing the documents, saying if it's privileged or not, and then if it's not privileged, if it's protected by privilege, passing it on to the prosecution or the other side, performing the same duty as a special master. Usually, a special master is somebody that is well regarded in their field. So in the Eileen Cannon one, it was a former, or maybe it was a retired federal district court judge, and then Lawrence Lessig is a very well regarded attorney.
It's a lot of times a former judge or someone who is just phenomenally known in their field. So yeah.
The criticism of taint teams is usually that it's like a team in the prosecutor's office or a team in the police department, but probably prosecutor's office or DA. So like you're in the same building as them, you probably get lunch with them. Like there's too much overlap that we're worried about. Versus special master, it's like both sides usually propose who they want it to be, and the judge selects from a list. So not something I've ever actually had the privilege of interacting with, but it is kind of a funny niche that makes it in the news sometimes. I guess jumping back to the privilege things, do you guys want to add anything to other than do not confess to murder?
Well, yeah, other than not confessing to murder, so let's talk about that.
Who is right on whether the cops should or should not have been there? Is it the cops or is it Mr. Holler himself?
Help you?
Mickey Holler. I'm an attorney taking over Mr. Vincent's practice.
You're going to need to come back tomorrow. This is a crime scene. This area is sealed off.
No, the crime scene was a parking garage, actually, not this office. There are client files here I need to access and apparently safeguard.
I think 100% the police should be there. They should be there. They should have a special. They have a warrant. But a murder just happened. There's a good chance. And now maybe you say that a person's place of business is not a reason for them to investigate the murder, so maybe they shouldn't be there for that reason.
I think if you're the cops and someone's murdered in their car in the parking garage of the building where their office is, it is entirely reasonable to think that the crime started in the office and proceeded to the car.
There. Yeah.
Or yes. But what they should have done is, put some police tape up over the door to the office and waited for a search warrant. Well, I presume they did go get a search warrant.
Yeah, so we're making some presumptions of fact. We're like, I hope that they spoke, that they have a judge's order saying that they can go. They have a warrant saying they can go there, and like they especially went out of their way to inform the judge this is an attorney's office. There will be attorney-client privilege issues.
If that's the case, shouldn't that been the first thing the cop did was hand the search warrant to Holler?
Fair, yeah. Okay, so if they're searching it without a search warrant, then that is also an issue. That's like a separate issue that's not being addressed.
Right. An issue that's just not discussed.
Which, if he didn't bring that up, then he's a terrible attorney.
No. You could have an argument for exigent circumstances. The guy's
the door was wide open. It was plain
it's
view.
Possible that the person who did it is in the office, so they need to go check that. But exigent circumstances doesn't get you to the point where you're opening filing cabinets and rifling through.
Well, I also think if he didn't raise this,
as they are shown to be doing,
I think we can assume that there was a search warrant because he didn't raise any of these issues, or he's a bad attorney. Your call.
Or he's a bad attorney. And to be fair, the presiding judge who told him about all this is like, the cops are there right now, probably violating their attorney-client privilege. You should go over there.
This is an order transferring Mr. Vincent's practice to you. I can rescind it just as fast. I will be monitoring you, Mr. Holler. I want an updated inventory of cases by the beginning of next week. After that, a bi-weekly status update of every case on which you will remain counsel. Am I clear?
I won't let you down, Your Honor.
Don't let your clients down. I suggest you get to Mr. Vincent's office right now. The police are no doubt searching it and probably invading their privacy as we speak.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good luck, Mr. Holler.
Yeah, why doesn't she do anything?
I don't know.
Mike, she signed the generic
because
order.
It's not dramatic if they follow all the rules.
She signed the generic order, so it's his problem.
So you can make excuses for plot holes when it adds to the quality of the show or the movie. In this case, it's just bad writing. Like the judge doesn't want to be a judge. I don't know.
Well, actually, Mike, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but we'll eventually get to a point where this may make sense to you in future episodes. That's all I'll say.
All right.
Okay. Anything else on the privilege side of things? I mean, listen, I would have, with Being someone that is not a criminal defense lawyer, I'm not exactly sure how I would have handled the next step, but I'm pretty confident going in and saying, get the hell out of my new office is probably not unfair.
I think you're right, but I also think that, like, if there was a search warrant,
if there's a search warrant, there's no way they wouldn't leave. They would hand him the search warrant.
Yeah.
And then he would have to go get that search warrant undone and I don't think that would have happened. So I don't think they have a search warrant. I think they just sort of wandered in.
Well, then he's a bad attorney. I don't know. I assume that there was. I have to assume that there was a search warrant because it just doesn't make sense otherwise.
And if there was a search warrant, then there absolutely would be a taint team or a special master or something, and the cops would not be the ones going through and rifling through the documents.
But also, like, if there's no search warrant and the judge knows that they're doing that, that's fucked up in its own way. Like,
that's yeah. This is one of those situations where, in order to be a lawyer and watch the show, you just kind of have to let it slide.
Yeah, because it doesn't make sense either way.
Well,
that's like everything else in the show.
Either with or without a search warrant, it doesn't necessarily make sense. So yeah. All right. Well, I think we hit all the big stuff. I think we've hit the big stuff on this one. Many more things to come in future episodes, but that's a good overview. Let's get into the fun thing, the rankings.
So for new listeners, at the end of every episode, we like to give our ratings about what we think of the episode, both legally and just how we enjoyed it or didn't enjoy it. We usually rate it out of nine justices, reflecting the 9 justices on the Supreme Court. Not to be confused with jurors. Just to go first, because I'm the only one that hadn't had a background watching this, I guess. Wasn't a huge fan. This is not, I would say, not radioactive. Or the legal takes are not radioactively bad. There are some shows that we watch where, like the most Ren and Stimpy cartoon version of the law is what's being depicted. This is 3 justices out of 9. Does that sound like a reasonable guess for how legally accurate it is? There's questions at pretty much any major scene about how did that actually work out like that, but also you could imagine some things happening like that. And then for how much I liked it, wasn't a huge fan, not gonna lie, didn't really like it. I'm gonna also give it 3 justices.
We're starting strong for Mike. This is just a strong episode for Mike.
I do it again.
And then let's see. I've watched 1 season and 1 episode. And by the way, we may have to come back and watch the first episode of season 2 because damn. I'll say this: the final scene of season 2, episode 1, made me so angry from a just knowledge of the law perspective. We could spend an episode on the last 10 minutes. It doesn't matter.
I really didn't know where you were going with that.
Well, and I think, by the way, I think we're going to slowly go through this over the course of time, whether jumping around or doing multiple episodes at once or either way. Yeah. But we'll certainly get into it.
Geoff?
It is a mixed bag. We've gone through a lot of the things that, some of this just isn't a thing. Some of it is very muddled. On the other hand, there is some stuff that is pretty decent. I like the fact that they're talking about him having left the practice because of his opioid addiction, and they are addressing that issue. I like the fact that when the judge asks him why he left the law, he's totally upfront and straightforward about why he did. He's not lying to the judge.
You're right. Those parts were good.
And even we didn't really touch on it, but there's this major case out there that is now on his lap. And he goes and talks to that client and talks about, the fact that the retainer agreement that the client signed with Mr. Vincent had a provision where Vincent is allowed to, if needed, consult with Mickey Haller, which Mickey didn't realize was in the agreement until he read it.
Now, as my case manager explained, Jerry transferred his practice to me. If you look at the contract of representation you signed with him, you'll see it allowed Jerry to discuss your case with me.
Did he? Discuss it with you?
Now, the point I'm making, Jerry trusted me.
Doesn't mean I have to.
No, it does not.
It's nice that is something that can be included. And I have worked with attorneys who have included those sorts of provisions in their representation agreements. So there are details in here that are good. There are details in here that are not great at all. So I'm gonna give it. I was gonna say a 4, but I think for at least touching on the substance abuse and issue, I'm going to give it a 5 on in terms of, legal accuracy, and the fact that they get a bunch of the procedures wrong, but a lot of this would have played out reasonably similar to how we saw it. So I'm going to give it 5 out of 9 justices on that front. And then in terms of pure entertainment value, I mean, I did watch the entire season and enjoyed it. But just this episode, I think I can give this a 6 out of 9.
All right. So at least Geoff. So from so far, what we have is Mike just didn't enjoy it.
I'll watch more of this. I'm willing to watch more of this, but I watch bad things sometimes.
And I'm rating just this episode. Like if we were to incorporate the beginning of season 2, I would give it not what I gave it.
At some point, we can go back and rate it as a season as a whole.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think so Mike has only seen this episode as well as the movie, right?
Yep.
Geoff's done a season plus an episode. I have watched both seasons of this all the way through, probably 10 different times. So
wow.
And Mike and I did watch the movie, I believe, for the prior iteration of
yeah, we could release that episode at some point.
And you all may get to hear that again later in life when we decide to put those back up.
That's true.
Yeah.
Or we could redo that episode.
Or we redo it.
Anyway,
Derrick. Here's the funny thing. I don't even remember listening to that one, so I have no idea how it was. Because I was a listener for a while, and I don't actually remember.
The recording went so long. I was so tired. Excellent. It's my one memory of it.
Excellent. But on my side, so for me, for the law, I'm kind of with Geoff. Yeah, there are certain things that are wrong, and we spend a lot of time here talking about the things that were wrong, including the transferring of the practice and, how that whole thing would have gone. But it's just as Geoff said, where we would end up is similar. It just would have taken longer and been a different procedure. And as someone who has his own firm, I love watching shows that sort of get into that aspect of it. And the aspect of him having his own firm and how it would have worked, having a solo practitioner take over a solo practitioner's office is pretty accurate. Like them trying to piece together stuff, as we discussed, like having to go through every client and tell them I'm your lawyer now, how he acted with Trevor Elliott. So I'm going to go 6. I think it's just a little bit better than, and by the way, I think this is better than what a lot of shows do in terms of the legal side of things. I mean, we have,
certainly.
You guys have certainly gone the gamut, and the guest episode I was on, I'm not even sure if we gave that a 1. So, love guaranteed. I don't think even got a 1 or a 2 rating from us on that one. So it's certainly better, certainly substantially better than that. In terms of enjoyment, for the episode itself, we don't have to get into the series. I'm thinking of it as a first episode and how it sort of sets up a series. I'm going to give it a 6 or 7. I think it sort of sets it up pretty well. Like, in and of itself, I don't think it's that entertaining if it was looking at it just by its episode by itself with nothing else. But as a setup first episode of a series, I actually think it's pretty good.
You all are making fair points, and most pilot episodes, I have a theory that a lot of pilot episodes are bad, unless it's like The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, where the pilot episode is like the best episode.
But what's interesting about this one is all 10 episodes of this season were released at the same time. So it's not added pot.
Yeah, but it's still a pilot.
It's still a pilot.
It is like, here's the episode that sets up everything else. So, fair points. I'm going to resist the urge to up my numbers, but you're tempting me.
Excellent. So, regardless, it seems like even Mike, who didn't like it, will be willing to continue on.
I would give it another episode or 2. Yeah, I'm not good. Even if we're not watching it with you guys, I would give it another episode or 2 just as like something on in the background. But if we're doing more episodes, I'll watch the season. It's
excellent.
Fine. Yeah.
Should we tease what we're doing next episode, or just proceed to the outro?
We should tease because I don't even remember, so it'll be a surprise for me too.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to our discussion of Season 1, Episode 1 of The Lincoln Lawyer. Episode title, He Rides Again. Next episode, which will drop whenever we decide that these are dropping, we will be discussing Jaws.
Oh, yeah.
Which should be a ton of fun, because you wouldn't think a law movie, but once you scratch the surface, there's some interesting stuff to talk about.
I'm excited about that. I love that movie. We should also, if we can put a subcontext on this episode, that it's not so grand jury. They ride again.
Sure.
Excellent.
All right.
See, that's another reason why this was a good first episode. Just throwing it out there.
Sure. Whatever you say, Derek.
The Not So Grand Jury is sponsored by Morwa PLLC.
The opinions expressed in the Not So Grand Jury are those of the hosts themselves and not of their respective employers.
The theme music for the Not So Grand Jury is from Gustav Holst's Jupiter and is in the public domain.
If you want to get in touch with us, if you want to suggest future movies, or even if you want to offer corrections, you can email us at notsograndjury@gmail.com.
The Not So Grand Jury is copyright 2024, all rights reserved.